Good morning, Dreamforce! Who's excited? All right, this is Maximize Maintainability with Process Builder and Componentized Workflow. Here's the forward-looking statement, first one of many you'll see at Dreamforce. And essentially, it says, base your purchasing decisions on current features and functionalities in Salesforce, not roadmap items. All right, so let me get a feel for my audience. Who's a developer? System admin. System admin / developer? All right, who has never seen Process Builder? Visual workflow? No, just you. All right. So I'm Jennifer Lee, Salesforce Business Consultant at John Hancock. I'm also a newly minted Salesforce MVP. I blog about Salesforce at jenwlee.wordpress.com, where I do a lot of how-tos on Process Builder and Flow. I'm also a Trailhead addict. 160 badges. I'm also the co-host of Salesforce Automation Hour with Rakesh Gupta and David Litton, and I'm also the social media manager for Women in Tech Diversity. You can reach me on Twitter at JenWLee or on the Success community. All right, so here are my other two Dreamforce sessions. Tomorrow, we're going to have a friendly competition with my fellow MVP, Chris Edwards, Mike Gill, and Rakesh Gupta in the Admin Meadow Theater. And we're going to present 4 creative process automation solutions for your vote, and you're going to all vote for me, right? And then 4:30, we're going to do a business analysis focused breakout session, Don't Build Yet, how to understand and document process in Salesforce. All right, so at the end of the session, what you'll take away is, for those system admins out there, you'll be able to learn how to reuse configuration where possible to minimize maintenance. Now, this is something that developers know how to do in reusing components, so we're going to learn as system admins how to do that. We're going to also apply the development concepts of dry and wet to configuration. Dry meaning don't repeat yourself, and we're going to avoid wet. We enjoy typing because we don't want to do a lot of that work, right? We're going to identify key elements to componentize a flow. We're going to build more efficient, easily maintainable flows, make our flows smarter by having Process Builder do that heavy lifting for us, and then we're going to reduce rework by bringing in subflows into our multiple flows. So here's our use case. Addison Dogster is a system admin / developer at Universal Containers. Sally Sunshine is her operations manager. So Sally goes to Addison and says, give the finance department these permissions and give the sales division these other permissions. So Addison does her analysis. The requirements are pretty straightforward. And so she solutions this by creating 2 permission sets, the ABC permission set for the finance users and the DEF permission set for the sales division users. And then she assigns the users to those permission sets, right? Easy peasy, done and done. But is she really? Because what we need to consider is, what if new users are onboarded onto the system, users are transferred into different departments? You don't want to leave that to humans to remember to add and remove. So as system admins and developers, it's our job to be security aware and to grant users the least privileged permissions, enough to do their job, but not elevated so that they could cause other damage in our orgs, right? So consider the example where we have a customer service rep who needs to be able to see SSNs or credit card information, PII data or PHI data, personal health information. So this user has view encrypted data permissions. But what if this user moves on to the sales division? I'm going to be hard-pressed that you can justify that sales rep needs access to SSN and credit card information. So if we leave it for the human to remember, chances are they won't, and now this person has more access than they need to. So what Addison ends up doing is she found a way to do this declaratively and have Process Builder and Flow add and remove users from a permission set and have Salesforce do the remembering instead of humans. So she found commonality. So for the ABC permission set, we have user equals finance. And for the DEF permission set, we have the division equals sales. So as Susan moves from the finance department over to the sales department, we're automatically removing the ABC permission set and adding the DEF permission set. And as Justice joins the finance department, we're automatically adding the ABC permission set. So this is how she handled it. She created one process builder to add and remove the ABC permission set. Based on different criteria, it will either invoke the add ABC permission set flow or the remove ABC permission set flow. And she did something similarly for the DEF permission set. So this design is fine and dandy if you have 1, 3, 5 permission sets. But consider your org over time. You have 10, 20, 50, over 50 permission sets in your org. That design no longer becomes sustainable. Because imagine if poor Addison has to go in and make a change to the flow or the process builder. Now she's making it to multiple, and then now she has to regression test that. So what we need to do instead is come up with a smarter design, a componentized design. So taking that development concept and using it for configuration. So we're going to limit the amount of reuse. So instead of building flows and cloning them and then making minor tweaks, we're going to make a componentized, modularized flow. And then we're going to have Process Builder do the heavy lifting by pushing more information to make that flow understand what it needs to do. And also, similar to the concept of triggers, where we have one trigger operating on an object, where possible, we're going to consolidate that into one process builder. So I know you're sitting there and you're thinking, all right, so I usually get my requirements, and I could fulfill them by, building out a process builder and flow, and I could just snap that out and meet the requirements. But now you're saying, build a smarter flow, build a smarter process builder. That's going to take more time, right? You're not going to be able to turn that around quickly. However, the amount of time that you spend coming up with a smarter design that you can reuse, the more time that you're going to save down the road when you have to maintain those multiple clones that you've created. So here's what Addison did. She took a step back. She created one consolidated process builder, add and remove user from permission set. So she's covering the finance department permission set, the sales division, the call center, all the permission sets in her org. And then she has one consolidated visual workflow, so add, remove user from permission set. And in the process builder, we are loading it up with additional information, passing it over to Flow, so Flow knows what to do. So as her org grows over time and permission sets are added and removed, she's only touching that one process builder. She's not even touching the flow. But let's not stop there. Let's think of other ways that we could reduce the rework and maximize maintainability. So ask yourself these questions as you take a look at the flows in your org. Are you creating the same flows over and over again? Are there repeating elements in your flow, all or many? And when you make a change, are you touching multiple flows? Because those are candidates for bringing in subflows into your flows. So here's an example of it. It's over here, right? So as best practice, what Addison does is in every single flow in her org, she has two flow elements. One does a custom metadata lookup and pulls in the production support email addresses and the org region name, and then another sends an email out to the production support if there's a DML fault in your flow. So that's a record lookup, create, delete, update, and their fast flow equivalents. But she has those 2 steps in every single flow in her org. So if she ever needs to make a change, now she's touching all those. So that becomes a maintenance nightmare. So what she ended up doing is she took these 2, pulled it into its own flow called send flow fault email, right? So now she has these 2 pieces, and then she's bringing it into all the flows as a subflow. So if she ever needs to make a change, she's only going into that one flow and making the change, and it's reflected everywhere else. All right, now live demo. All right, so this is Process Builder. So we have it running on the user object when the record is created or deleted, edited. And I'm only going to go through a couple of these criteria so you get a sense of what's going on here. So we have the new finance user running off of when the record is new, department is finance. As an immediate action, we're going to invoke a flow. And here we're calling the add remove user from permission set flow. For the variable user ID, we're passing the user ID. Variable PB permission set action, we're passing the word add, and now that's going to tell flow to add the permission set in this case. var permission set name, we're going to pass ABC underscore permission underscore set. So here, while we can pass hard-coded IDs, those are absolute no-no in my book. And the reason why you can hard-code IDs in Process Builder and Flow, and the reason why you shouldn't do that is if you're creating a permission set from scratch or a new record that you're referencing and you're trying to move it up in the regions, you're going to have a different Salesforce ID in all cases, and then you're going to need to go into that Process Builder and Flow and make that change, and now you have different variations in your different environments. So instead, what I do, while an API name can change, it's less likely to change, so I usually reference the API name. So that's what we're doing here. So API underscore permission underscore set is the API name for that permission set. And then for the var flow name, we're passing the flow name that will be referenced in the email if there's a fault in the flow. So for existing user, previously finance department, we have user is active, prior value is the user's department is finance, and the user's department is changed. Here we're invoking the same flow, same deal with the user ID. In this case, for the var PB permission set action, we're going to tell flow to remove the permission set in this case. Same permission set and flow name as before. And I'm going to run through one more for you. New sales division user. Here's the record is new, and the division equals sales. We're going to, again, invoke that same flow. User ID is the same. var PB permission set action. We're going to pass the word add to tell it to add the permission set. var permission set name, DE underscore permission underscore set. So again, that's the DEF permission set API name, and then the flow name's the same. So we're going to hop over to the visual flow, and so the first step we're doing a lookup on the permission set, and here is where we're looking up the name equals that API name. So here is what we're doing to get that ID, so we're not hard coding that ID in here. Right, so once it finds that name, we're going to take the ID and we're going to assign it to the variable var permission set ID, and it's going to assign a null value if it can't find the permission set with that name. Then we're going to make a decision, because we don't want to move forward with our flow if for whatever reason we can't find that permission set with that API name. So here we're doing the decision where the variable permission set ID null is false, so that means it has a value. Then we're going to move forward from there. We're going to do a record lookup of the permission set assignment, where the assignee ID equals the user ID, and permission set ID equals that permission set ID that we just did the lookup on. And if it does find the record, which means the user has that permission set, we'll take the assignee value and we'll assign it to another variable, user has permission set. If it doesn't find a value, that means the user does not have that permission set, we're going to assign a null value. In our next step, we have a decision. So here, we're going to look at the var pb permission set action equals add. So again, remember, in our process builder, we said to add the permission set. However, we also want to do another check to make sure that the user doesn't already have that permission set, because if Salesforce goes and it tries to add that permission set, you're going to get an error saying duplicate permission set and your flow's going to fault. And for the other path we have is the var pb permission set action equals remove. We're going to remove that permission set. However, again, we want to do that check to ensure that the user has a permission set already to remove, because if Salesforce goes and tries to remove it and it's not there, again, you'll get a fault in your flow. So here for the add path, it's just a record create on the permission set assignment where the assignee ID equals user ID, permission set ID equals the ID. And for the remove, it's just the opposite, a record delete. So here you'll notice that I have a subflow. And let me just hop over here. So this is the flow that Addison brought over as a separate flow to manage. So we're doing a record lookup on custom metadata types, and if you haven't used it, it's awesome. It's much better than custom settings. So we're doing a lookup here where I'm pulling in the email addresses into a variable in the org region name. And then I'm doing a send email action. So we're referencing a text template here. I'm referencing the org name that we just pulled in from the custom metadata type. And I have static text, error on flow, execution. And then I have a variable calling flow name. Now, we're going to remember in our process builder, we had a variable flow name that then we passed into our master flow. And then we're going to pass here so that we know what flow caused the error. And then we have the email addresses that we pulled in from the custom metadata type. So back here, to pull in a subflow, we're on our palette, and we're going to scroll down. And under flows, this is all the flows in your org. So any flow in your org can be a subflow to another flow. And all you're going to do is you're going to find your flow, and then you're just going to move it onto the canvas. So since I have this configured, I'm going to pop it open. You can name it, give it a unique name, a description. So for input fields, I have the var calling flow name. So that's passing the flow name variable from the master flow. And then I have the vault flow message, which is a system-generated flow error. One thing to note, when you bring in a subflow by default, Salesforce will automatically add an empty row. If you don't need it, you need to cancel out, because if you don't put a value, you get an error. So I usually trash can it out and hit OK. All right, so. All right. So I included some additional examples of process builder and componentized flows, so to get your creative juices going, so when you get back from Dreamforce, you can start taking a look at the flows that you have in your org and start improving them. So as a recap of the session takeaways, now you'll know how to reuse configuration where possible to minimize maintenance. We're going to apply the development concepts dry and wet to configuration, so don't repeat yourself and avoid wet. We enjoy typing. We now can identify key elements to componentize a flow, build more efficient, easily maintainable flows, make our flows smarter by having Process Builder do that heavy lifting for us. And then we're going to reduce rework by bringing in subflows into our other flows. So for resources, I provided some Process Builder and visual workflow resources here. I highly recommend the Process Automation module on Trailhead if you haven't done that already. I also included links to the various assess committees, so as you're configuring and you run into issues, definitely post to the assess committee. There's always people willing to jump in and help out. And I also included 2 blogs. Rakesh Gupta's automationchampion.com, as well as my own, jenwlee.wordpress.com, where we post a lot of how-tos on Process Builder and Flow. And with that, I will open it up for questions.
User changes profile.
Yes. The question was, I use department in my Flow. Can I use profile? And the answer is yes. So the question is, what's the difference between a record lookup, for example, and a fast lookup? So a record lookup does one, and a fast, you do a collection where you just get a bundle of them, and then you take action.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. I came in at the tail end of this, so I apologize if this has already been answered in your presentation. Can you use flows to do individual record sharing access? So, for example, we have some pretty complex sharing rules with our customer portal users to help open up a full account hierarchy with them and any other related records. And I'm wondering if I can convert all of that into a flow.
So record sharing, I haven't done that. Chris, have you?
Okay.
Yeah. Why don't you post it to the chatter, and I'll take a look, and then we'll get back to you. And just to note, I will be posting this out on the chatter feed for the session, and if you do have any additional questions that you didn't get a chance to add that to chatter, and we'll talk about it offline. Thank you, everybody.